Let's bring in retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. He is a military expert and senior fellow at Defense Priorities. Good morning, Lieutenant Colonel. First of all, help us understand why this ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile, is so dangerous.
Well, the main reason is because it's one of the hypersonic variety, which can fly, orders of magnitude faster than a lot of the other missiles. It can also change directions, and it's extremely difficult to track. But we also have to understand that nearly every ICBM already is hypersonic in speed, and they're virtually impossible to defend against already. That's not a lot of people are aware of that. So, kind of to your correspondent's comment here, I think that may be more to the domestic audience than the military ones, international, because our defense is well aware that the ICBMs are already nearly impossible to defend against. So I think this is more of a Putin's trying to just threaten people and make us scared more than we are. But we do need to recognize that the nuclear threat is very real and something that Biden is right to take concern about.
Yeah, so let's turn to the battle for Donbass. I mean, so far, the Ukrainians have really been able to hold their positions so far. But, there's a lot of folks wondering exactly how long that can last. I mean, how long do you think it will last?
Yeah, what we're seeing already from various reports I can put together is that actually Russia has started to take a number of smaller towns in key positions as they're bringing in substantial and saturating bombing into other positions. And so far, what Russia's doing is the classic called shaping operations, where they're softening up, so to speak, some of the concentrations of Ukrainian military forces. Their primary objective is not really the capture of large cities as much as it is the destruction of the Ukrainian forces. And what we're seeing so far is that there's lots of probing attacks and reconnaissance in force where Russia's trying to identify where the weak spots are. And we have to understand this is a front of almost 300 miles, and it's virtually impossible to capture, to keep all of that a consistent line. So if Russia identifies a weak gap somewhere and they're later able to penetrate through there, that's going to put a lot of Ukrainian forces at greater risk. And that's what we'll be watching for, is does Russia succeed in any of these large penetrations where they can then cordon off certain portions of the Ukrainian army, or do they have the ability to interdict those penetrations when they come and maneuver against them in the rear and cut them off? That's what we'll be watching for. That'll determine how this battle goes.
So in Mariupol, what do you make of Putin's last-minute decision to now not storm the Azovstal steel plant? And that's that last significant holdout for hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers and civilians. He says their tactic is now going to be a blockade instead of trying to storm it. What do you make of that?
Yeah, militarily, that absolutely makes sense. There's no point in just, ratcheting out and going in for each individual person in that very labyrinth complex that's the Azovstal complex. There's no reason to do that. All they have to do is just keep that last piece cordoned off, and virtually the city is already theirs. But at the same time, there's also reports both from Zelensky's office and from the Kremlin that they're negotiating even right now to try to get those last remaining troops withdrawn, because even though the Russians don't go after them because they have them surrounded, they can't get even food or water, much less ammunition. So the risk to those soldiers is that they would slowly die if they don't get some help. So I think probably in the coming hours or days, you're going to hear that those troops are finally negotiated out.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm not sure what's worse, storming the steel plant or a blockade, because as you just mentioned, you're basically starving them out. And President Zelensky saying there's about 120,000 people still trapped in that city. Just heartbreaking. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, thank you so much.
Always my pleasure. Thanks for having me.